Hello everybody, new video here from Bicotic. I'm finally back after not being very well for a few weeks, but we're mostly back to normal, so let's crack on. Something slightly different today. I got a comment from Jonathan and he suggested that I look at the Rondo HVRT CF1, the Giant Propel Advanced Pro 1 and the Orro Venturi STC Ultegra Tailor-Made. And I thought, well, that's a fairly eclectic bunch of bikes, so let's have a look at those. Now the other thing that's different today is everything you see here you can have a go with yourself. There's a link in the description down below and you'll be able to load up this web page, fade between the bikes, select which bikes you want to fade between, like that. If you press the up arrow it zooms in, if you press the right arrow it moves around the bike, and if you press the left arrow it goes back the other way, and then if you press the down arrow it zooms back out again. And like I say, if you follow the link down below you can have a go with this yourself. Exactly the same thing I'm using here. And then if you scroll down a little bit, I've put together what I'm calling the Bicotic Road Bike Essential Picks, and if you did buy anything through these links I'd make a little bit of money, so that would be cool, so check them out. So if you press the SB button that gets rid of the scroll bars so that it stays still. And here we have our first bike, the Rondo HVRT CF1. Interesting bike this from Rondo, and I've not done anything on a Rondo bike before. I think they're based in Poland. It's quite a nice looking bike, I like the look of it. Now the premise with this bike is it's the only bike you need, as you can use it as a full-blown road race bike, pretty aero. And then we have a special feature here on the forks, and it basically allows you to have the front axle in two different positions, a high one and a low one. And if you press the F button up here you'll see a picture from the Rondo manual, and you can see here how these little flip chip things work. You just flip them around, screw them back in, and if you're in the low position you're going to need to use the adapter on the brake. So fairly straightforward, I guess. So set it to the low axle and that's going to lift it up a bit at the front, so more endurance bike. Set it to the high axle, you're going to drop it down a bit at the front, more race bike. But that's the theory. I do look at the geometry in a bit, so I'll talk more about that there. And this bike will take up to a 30mm tyre on a 700C wheel, but then you also have the possibility of putting on 650B wheels, and then you can put massive tyres on up to 47mm. So what do you think? The only bike you ever need? Comment down below. Carbon aero seat post, I'm not entirely sure what this little hole is for. Comment down below if you know what that's for. Now what I see as a drawback for this bike is it's remarkably expensive for an Ultegra mechanical bike, 5.5 grand, and weight wise 8 kilos. I guess that's to be expected really. I like the fact that it's got the Hunt Limitless wheels on and a set of GP 5000 clinchers, so that's all good, but yeah, pretty expensive. Next bike up, it's the Giant Propel Advanced Pro 1. If we just fade between the two there, nice colour scheme on this bike. I like this matte black fade to sort of a matte lilac colour. Definitely improvement over the Giant colour schemes of a couple of years ago. But as I've said a million times before, the Giant Propel has a giant problem, and it's this enormous pointy thing here. And if you compare that to the Rondo, look at the difference there. That, my friends, is taking the whole thing too far just to have integrated cables, and that's a definite no from me. Ultegra mechanical, same as the Rondo. Rondo does have a weird chainstay here, asymmetrical as well. Much more normal here on the Giant. Both got aero features at the back. Both got the carbon aero seat post. Next bike up we have the Orro Venturi STC Ultegra Tailor-Made. Nice blue colour, fading between that and the Rondo. A little bit lower at the front. I'm not completely sold on the way this bike looks. Not sure why they photographed it with the seat post sticking out so far. That looks a bit out of proportion to me. And I've got to say, this part of the bike here, if you press the L button, it obviously looks a bit like the S5, the Chapter 2 and the 3T. All got this curvature over the back wheel, similar on the Orro. And for me, I'm not particularly keen on that, but it looks pretty aero, I guess. And I've actually got a friend who's got a very similar, slightly older version of this bike, and he does very well on it, so it's definitely up to the task. What I forgot to mention was that Giant Propel is 4.5 grand. and the Venturi is 359. Unfortunately they haven't listed the weight, which is very annoying, but I think the reason it is called Tailor Made is because it's got this new integrated carbon bar and stem. I think that's why it's called Tailor Made. The old version just had normal bar and stem. Let me know if I've got that wrong. And again, if you compare that to the Giant, ugh, what a shame. And the Rondo much more conventional there. So there we go, they're the bikes, the Orro, the Rondo, and the Giant Propel. And like I said at the beginning, if you do fancy having a go with this and fading between the bikes to take a look at the differences, then follow the link down below. Now the next thing I wanted to take a look at was the geometry for these bikes, and if you click the Geo button at the top, that will take you through to my spreadsheet that I've created for this. And if you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know about my Bicotic Geo score, and for this one I've added a bunch of specialized bikes as controls, and then I've added today's bikes. We've got the Rondo in the high and the low axle position. I've put two Propels in, the medium and the medium large, because I struggled to decide which size I would actually go for, so we'll see how they pop up. And then we've got the Orro, and that actually came in as a large. So basically I grab the wheelbase, the reach, the stack, the chainstay, the head angle and the BB drop for all of the bikes, and for each stat we calculate where it is in the range of all these bikes, and we add all of that together and average it, and then sort that by their score. And ignore this, I've just taken 0.2 off to make the graph easier to look at. On the left we have what I call the hummingbirds, and on the right we have the albatrosses, and then a scale in between. So full albatross, we've got the specialized diverge, and we did actually see that last time I did this. I also chucked in a couple of mountain bikes just out of interest. The Fuse is a hardtail trail mountain bike, and the Epic hardtail is an XC mountain bike. Need to take that with a little pinch of salt, because obviously they have very different stem bar combos, which will change things around, but clearly they are towards the albatross end of the scale, which you would expect. And then we have a step down to the Crux, which is a racing gravel slash cyclocross bike. We then have the LA, which you probably could expect to find up here. This is a fairly laid back road bike. What's a bit confusing about the LA is you get the LA Sprint, which actually is a much more full-blown crit bike, and it is a bit weird that they're in the same family. You don't want to buy this one by mistake if you actually want a racing bike. Then we've got the Roubaix, the endurance road bike, and then a pretty big step down to our full-blown road bikes here. We've got the Athos, then we've got the Shiv TT bike. I think I was expecting that to be further up to the left, but again it's quite a different genre of bike, so take that with a pinch of salt. We've got the SL7, and like I say, the LA Sprint. So full hummingbird to the left here, we've got both sizes of the Giant Propel, and using this formula they are popping up as pretty extreme race bikes. You may not want to ride that all day, it might not be super comfy, but like I say, you've got to take all this with a pinch of salt. The main reason this is useful is because it's incredibly difficult to actually get to ride all these bikes, so we've got to sort them somehow, and this is the best way I've come up with it so far. So that's the Giant Propel, full hummingbird in this group of bikes. Then right smack bang in the road bikes we've got the Orro Venturi, and then we come to the Rondo in the low and the high axle position. And this is interesting. I expected these to be much further apart from each other, because otherwise what's the actual point of swapping the axle round? And actually what I'm finding a bit weird is you would have thought putting it in the low axle that would lift it up at the front, therefore making it more of an endurance bike, and the high axle lowering at the front, making it more of a race bike. I expected these to be the other way round, and actually if we look at the data, unless I've got this completely wrong, putting it in the low axle increases the stack, shortens the reach, so that's more comfy, but the problem is the bottom bracket goes up and the bike becomes shorter, which are actually the opposite of what you might want for an endurance bike or a gravel bike. So it's all quite interesting. Obviously the best way to judge this would be by riding these bikes, but there we go. Comment down below if you think it is a great feature or maybe a little bit of a gimmick and you maybe would never use it. So there we go, that's looking at all the geometries, the Rondo, the Orro and the Propel. Now if you press T for top trump. That's going to bring up this image here where I've tried to make a decision on if I had to choose one of these, which one I would buy. And like I say, it's incredibly difficult to actually ride all these bikes and try them out for yourself, and even try different sizes so that you can get the right size of bike for your fit. So there's always going to be some guesswork involved in buying a bike, and what I've tried to do with this graphic is calculate by looking at what we do know and making a decision. So a green blob is a thumbs up. So the Rondo and the Giant get a green blob for availability. You can actually get this Rondo because it's in stock on the Sigma Sports UK website, and the Propel is in stock at various Giant stores on the Giant website in the UK. Obviously the red blob for the Rondo is the price. It does seem very expensive. The Orro gets the green blob for the price because it's a lot cheaper than the other two. I'm going to give Orro a red blob for not listing the weight because that's really annoying. And I've put a category in called kit spec, but I've also added wheels and tyres because I sort of see these as almost the most important part of the bike. I like the fact the Rondo's got the Hunt Carbon Limitless wheels, and I'm always banging on about the GP 5000s because they're my favourite tyres. The poor old Propel gets a red blob for looks because with that thing on the front it's a 5 out of 10. If they did change that out I'd be much happier. Possibly would go as high as a 7.9 out of 10. So come on, Giant. And then the Orro I think has done well on the kit spec. They've all got Ultegra mechanical as I've said, but the Orro does come with the carbon bar and stem integrated cables, and they're actually a make I've never heard of before, but you can look them up and have a look at them and they look pretty cool. So there we go. If I had to choose, I'd go with the Orro, and that's mainly because of the price, I'll be completely honest. And if you've been lucky enough to ride any of these bikes, let us know down in the comments down below. Like I say, if you'd like to try out this app for fading between the bikes, then follow the link down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next time.